Hey there, this is Will with the Real Estate Examiner. I wanted to bring another episode to you and talk about data modeling, the importance of modeling data and why we do it as appraisers, and how that's really changed over the last 5 to 10 years. Certainly since how appraisers started out, traditional methods like the paired sales analysis and a lot of simple summary statistics. Now we're growing into an age where we need to use new tools, and we need to know how those tools work, and we need to know how we can use those tools to our benefit and how we may be using them to our detriment. So I've created a class, and I'm kind of making this introductory video right now to start talking about it and get the discussion started. I want you to be thinking about how you use data and how you perform your analysis when developing an appraisal. In an appraisal, there's a lot of room to make opinions and judgments, and it's important to show now, especially, how we come up with those adjustments, how we come up with those opinions and our conclusions. So let's get into the class and let's start talking about it. Thanks. Bye. Hey, all right, so here we go. This is the PowerPoint presentation I've just made, a quick introduction to what I'm developing for the class. I kind of want to just bring this to you so that you can see what I'm developing, and I want to gain people's interest, and I want to see who is interested and how many people, just to make sure that I'm developing the class how people want it, but also measuring interest and seeing how many people are going to be interested in it. If there's any suggestions or complaints in regards to what I am developing, please feel free to just let me know in the comments below. That'll work great. So again, this is my MMA approach. It's the many models approach to data analysis, to developing opinions and conclusions in my appraisal reports. These are things that I do every day when I'm developing appraisals. I'm a certified residential appraiser, and I've been tried in court. I've been tried with state complaints, and I've won uh, numerous times due to having an excellent digital work file and considering more than one analysis for my conclusions. And I think that that can benefit everyone in our industry. And I really just need to start sharing that. One of the biggest problems that I had when I started being an appraiser as a trainee, I learned from my mentor how to fill out the form. And that was a lot of it. And the data analysis side was, it was assumed to be intuitive and did not require much recording of analysis besides, some scratches of ink on a piece of paper. That was about it. At the very most, it was simple summary statistics. And I have a serious problem with that for my own business. I won't work like that. And I don't recommend anyone to work like that. We have excellent tools available to us now, and we really need to be using them and understanding how they work and how they can benefit us. So here's my MMA approach. It's MMA themed PowerPoints. Keep you keep you engaged in a very dry subject, but I'll do my best to try and be entertaining in it. So one of the biggest things in regards to this approach is we're preventing liability. Every time I get an engagement letter, I measure the liability that I think I'll incur when I perform that appraisal assignment. That is not only in reference to the subject property, where it is, what the assignment is for, but also the data behind it, how strong the data is, and and what my analysis is going to look like. So let's kind of just jump into this, and I'll read the PowerPoints and I'll give you some notes on each one. So the course outline is, this is a rough outline. This may change, but Why are we going to be considering the many models approach and the traditional appraisal shortcomings that come about? The benefits of using the MMA, how MMA can be used in appraisal development, and then modeling examples. So I'll be discussing the benefits of why to do it, how you can use that in your appraisals, what sections of each appraisal you can use that in, which is nearly everything with exception to data entry into the form and actual examples. So if you are like me, at one time you were a trainee and your mentor actually never really showed you uh, modeling examples, even a paired sales model. You just, you learned that from McKissick or Appraisal Institute or whatever, and you are limited to what your mentor taught you or what you've taught yourself. You may want to know more about what other appraisers do, and in my case, you'll be knowing what I do in my appraisal assignments. So I'll be giving you examples that I actually use in my assignments and show you how I use them and how they work and how I report those models. And then I want to talk to you briefly about the importance of being a student of value. If you don't know already, I have a Facebook group called Students of Value, and this is a small group I'm developing regarding education of the appraisal industry and important tools in regards to our industry. This I've created it because I believe that as appraisers, we all need to be students of value. We always need to be educating ourselves and growing our techniques and analysis because the market's always changing and we don't know what the market is without looking and identifying and reporting that market. We aren't indicators of value. We don't say this is what something's worth because that's what we think it is. That's not the case. We are reporters of market conditions and market reactions. And that's really important. This is part of my community outreach so that people understand that, when they come and ask an appraiser what what something's worth, what the value is, we shouldn't even answer that, in my opinion, unless we're being engaged as an appraiser and we're going to be paid for that. Um, we should, in return, ask that person, well, what would you pay for it? And then report a survey of what other people said that they would pay for that, and what sales have actually occurred for an extra pool or an extra bathroom or whatever. Um, so it's an important distinction between as being a student of value and being someone who says what value is. And I think that the public needs to understand the difference, especially our other real estate professionals like real estate agents and brokers. So next slide. What is the many model approach? I'll just read this and then we'll kind of go through some notes. The many model approach is creating multiple indications of a conclusion and using those indications to develop an opinion. So when I say that, when you're developing multiple indications, you're using more than one model to develop, say, an adjustment for gross living area or an adjustment for market conditions or for that pool that all of your comparables may not share that similar significant factor of value. So when you have multiple models, you can rate the different models. You can decide on which models are stronger than others, and you can create excellent analysis, and you can report that analysis in your reports and your assignments. And it not only makes you look really good, but you know what you're talking about. You can discuss it. And if there's any disputes that come up, they have a really, really high hill to climb to come up and say, oh, you didn't do your job. And that's what we want. We don't want the reconsiderations of value anymore. We don't want the reports to the appraisal state boards. We don't want the Fannie Mae letters, all of that. You're an appraiser. You don't want any of these things. They're terrible for you. Here's some quick examples. 1, 2, 3, and 4 number out different models, and we can kind of talk briefly about the different models. Number 1 is a single paired sales analysis. And traditional appraisal assignments and when there is not a lot of data, and before, when appraisers were collecting data and keeping data in big binders, this was an excellent use of data and performing an analysis. And if you had multiple pairs, and that was great. It was an excellent way to do it. Now you can go ahead and you can develop single paired analyses for markets, and you can see repeated sales of the same property, and there's Excel spreadsheets and other web apps, and I use R Studio, and you can pull multiple pairs all the time in many neighborhoods, especially in my area of Houston. We have tons of data to use. So if you're a Houston appraiser and you don't use any paired sales, especially these days, I'm a little confused as to why you do that. So a single paired sales analysis, so just one for this one model. Next model is comparison and summary statistics of multiple paired sales analyses. So this is like the more superior model. Instead of just one single paired, you have multiple single paired, and then you pull summary statistics. When I say summary statistics, I mean average, median, and mode of your analysis. Then you have the third, and these aren't in superior or inferior order, 1 through 4. It's just I had to number them. So linear regression model, including pairs and non-pairs. So this would take into account all the market data that you've pulled for your market area or your neighborhood. So this may or may not be a superior indication of, let's say, market conditions. So it's something you have to consider when you look at your data and the shape of your data. And then number 4, multiple linear regression models and weighting each model on validity and reliability. This is something that I do a lot in my analysis, because I understand how to look at a linear regression model and the scatter plot, and I can consider the accuracy of the model fit, the linear regression line, and I can consider how the scatter plot is shaped around that, and if I am weaker on the higher end or the lower end, if it's actually a linear relationship. Does the market consider that significant factor of value? Like, for example, lot size. Many homes in older neighborhoods that have significant land to value ratios, let's say 60-70%. It tends to be that the different lot size, 100, 200, 500 square feet. In some neighborhoods, those significant differences do contribute to different values, but in others they don't, and therefore they don't have a linear relationship. And you can actually see that in the analysis that you would perform developing a scatter plot and a linear regression line and cleaning up your data, which we'll get into in the class. But not in this video. This is just an introduction. But I just want to give you the heads up that that's some of the things that we're going to be looking at and giving you the skills to be able to do, because it really is that important. In our day and age now, being appraisers, we really got to step up and elevate the industry. And that's what I'm trying to do here. So after the class, I want you to be able to exercise judgment and experience. And this is very important in our industry. This is very relevant, and we do need to do this. And it needs to be done by human beings. It can't be done by an AVM or a machine learning tool. It can be done a little bit by machine learning, but not well. Not to the point that it can mimic human behavior, because human behavior is irrational. And then you need to be able to report your outputs. One of the biggest things for me in regards to tools that are coming out in our industry. Excellent tools, they're great tools. But one of my biggest problems is appraisers using the output that a tool gives you and just slapping that into the report, and their job's done. And maybe that's accepted, maybe that's good enough. But I disagree. I don't think that we should be doing that. I think we should be using good judgment and considering the reliability and validity in those tools and how they developed that indication of, say, an adjustment or value. So we're going to talk about that a lot in the class. So why the many model approach? I may have touched on this already. I know I've said a lot already. But why MMA? Now let me just read this and then we'll go through some notes. To be comprehensive enough in analysis to cover as many market participant perspectives as reasonably possible. So what I want to do is I want to be able to cover as many market reactions as I can, especially in like a purchase transaction where I'm developing an appraisal. I want to be able to use enough comparable sales that I know what are comparable and what are not. And I want to be able to use enough analyses to show that I've considered the market reactions, the most significant and probable market reactions that are going to occur in my market area. I think that is incredibly valuable as appraisers for us to do. And I understand that that exceeds the typical standard, and it should be the new standard. I think that's exactly why we need human beings developing appraisals, and I think that needs to be reflected in the Fannie Mae standards, and the reason why we use appraisers in lending. Next note, models simplifying data, allowing for the capture of information like trends and market conditions or market reactions to an additional bathroom. These models allow for reproducibility among many data sets with similar results. What I mean by that is when you're developing models, you can reuse the same models, just different data. And you can develop techniques and analysis that are specific to your areas of competency, your city, your neighborhoods that you cover, and you can create trends and make adjustments in your analysis that are still very credible and viable. And that's not something that a appraiser that covers 5 states or a review appraiser or a machine learning tool or some AVM, certainly not Zillow, right? So human beings need to be a part of the analysis. It's incredibly important, and we need to understand simplifying the data for developing these models, because you don't need every piece of data for the market. You don't need to know what the color of the homes are, generally, I would think, or you don't need to know what kind of it does. Is there satellite dishes on every property, or how big every patio is on every property? That's too much data. You have to refine that data so that you can develop a model that is credible, that is significant. And that's one of the things that we're going to be talking about in the class. One of the most important things that I think that I can get across to students of value is all models are inherently wrong. When you use a model, you simplify the data, you take the most significant indicators of data and you develop a model using that. And inherently in that, if you were to build only one model, you are more wrong than considering multiple models, because you are simplifying the data and you need to be able to use different data sets and manipulate that data to show what's significant, what's reliable. That's why I am teaching the MMA approach. Uh, you can have manipulations in your data to show what's still hanging on, what's still indicating that square footage adjustment. Why do I keep getting this $44 per square foot adjustment in my analysis? My data has changed. I used a different segment of my data, or I've removed some outliers, and this is still happening. That shows a great significance, and that's why you should consider more heavily those models in your analysis. Most likely, we'll get into why, and we'll help with decision making in the class. So, yeah, some of the tools, just because a tool like, and I don't mean any negative things about any of these tools. I've used all of these tools and I like them all to varying degrees. But one of the biggest things, the biggest takeaway that you can get from this introduction right now is just because a tool like Spark or Market Machine or Data Master or Trend Sheet or Titan Analytics or even Excel gives you an output, an indicator of an adjustment, a linear regression model, or a summary statistic. This does not mean that that model used expert judgment. That's your job. And you need to consider whether you should go ahead and take that $44 per square foot linear regression coefficient and say, I need to throw that in my report as is. Well, why? Why are you doing that? Are you doing that because the tool gave that to you and you can have that in your digital work file and that's good enough? That's the current industry standard. One of the things that I cannot stand is slow progress in elevating the industry. Let's just go ahead and skip the idea that if the tool says you should do it, go ahead and throw it in your report. In my opinion, that's wrong. I will never train a trainee to do that. I will not allow it. It's not acceptable, and I think it's lazy. I think that we can go ahead and we can do a lot better. Is it the standard? Possibly. Uh, I think it depends on what we do in our scope of work rule. If another appraiser uh, does it in a certain way, you can do it in that way too. And if the majority all do that, then you can certainly do it. But if we're all doing it wrong, well, should you be doing it wrong as well? Who's to say what's wrong and right? But this is how I do it. And if you want to do it my way, I recommend it. So without a great degree of reliability, I will not use an output indicator, that $44 per square foot, just because that's what the tool says. If you have bad data going into your model, you're going to have a bad output. So if when you take that $44 per square foot at face value, you could be very wrong or you could be right. But it's important for you to measure that liability in your analysis. One perspective or model does not approach an enduring perspective, and we'll talk about enduring perspectives in the class. So, why MMA continued? I have talked a lot. This is my most talkative video yet. I hope that this hasn't gotten too dry or too boring. If you're still hanging around 20 minutes into this video, please help me out with getting more awareness, more perspective to other appraisers. I'd appreciate it if folks shared this video, liked, and if you like this video, if you wanted to subscribe to the channel, it helps me out a lot. I'd like to get more people involved in teaching this class someday, but in that effect, I have to teach a few people first. So if you're interested in doing something like that, if you want to start elevating the industry, if you want to partner with me, please let me know. I'd be happy to talk to you. All right, so moving on. Without a great degree of reliability, we already talked about that. So here you can talk about these different models to the left. You have a square footage regression here. Close price on the y-axis on the left side, square footage total on x-axis on the bottom, and you have a linear regression line that's attempting to fit this data. Now I have two large circles on the top graph here, and that you can see the different clusters of the data. You have 2,400 to 3,000 square feet. You have a grouping of data, and then around the 3,200 mark, you have another small grouping of data. And I'm going to talk to people in the class about this data model and how it can be improved, how we can refine it, and how we can use a better approach to modeling than just developing this. In the graph below, you can see the $600,000 outlier in the graph there. And I want to talk about that outlier and why you should use it as is, but remove that outlier. But consider looking at that comparable and making sure that it's not a comparable sale. Is it on a 100,000 foot lot where the rest of these are on 10,000 square foot lots, or did it have a pool and a quarters unit and a 6-car garage, and that's why it's worth more? These are different things that we need to look at as appraisers. But when we use these models, we develop these indications of value and adjustments. We need to go ahead and make sure that outliers like this are removed and or considered, and whether we should do both or just one or the other. So the many model approach reduces liability. As you can see already in this introduction, you can see how a lot of the moving parts are considering some of the shortcomings in analysis, using more than one model, how to use those models, how to refine them. And you don't want somebody calling out your model and saying, oh, this is terrible, or you didn't use enough indications of that value. You didn't use enough models. So I would also think that when using more than one model, you achieve a more comprehensive level of analysis. Showing your digital work file will be more like showing off than something to be worried about. You won't need to worry about trying to pad your work file. Not that you should do that after you submit your assignment, but someone wants to look at your work file and be like, yeah, sure, here you go, enjoy. And then you can also reduce the number of reconsiderations of value requests, or at least your response will be short and sweet and concise. That's always a fun thing to do. Traditional appraisal shortcomings. We've touched up on a few of these already because I've been talking a lot. And I'd like to just kind of reiterate a few of these. Some evidence is enough in the appraisal industry. And that is true traditionally, but it is growingly due to our current circumstances, which I'll try not to touch up on, but we need more. We need more in our digital work file. We need more analysis, and the appraiser needs to be a bigger part in that analysis. Not our tools, but the appraiser themselves. Performing as our peers would. We talked about this in our scope of work rule, that you're going to be looking at performing very similar analysis as your peers, and that's enough. When you look at the folks in our industry that are looking to make change and are representing minority communities and individuals that have not been well served by the industry, that may have been subject to racial bias. These are things that we want to prevent allegations of. And these are things that we do not want for our students of value. It's an issue. It's scary. And I don't think that we should open up the opportunity further when we have these tools of analysis available. I think that it's incredibly valuable to homeowners, regardless of where they live or who they are, that they understand what we did and how we did it and why. If they want to take the opportunity to understand that. And when we have enough community outreach, when we do enough of that, we will be able to change the tide a little bit. Um, is there evidence of racial bias in the appraisal industry? The allegations suggest yes. And some of the commentary that was read by Fannie Mae uh, suggests that people are unconsciously biased and they don't know it. And that's not okay. There needs to be education, there needs to be better understanding and self awareness. There really does. And one of the things that we're doing here is we're creating more models so that you can consider different perspectives and you don't have to um, be stuck with this one tool output. Your digital work file will be better. You can defend yourself better. Your your lawyer or your representative, or if you're part of an organization, they will be able to represent you better because your digital work file will be robust. Uh, the three approaches to value are models. I didn't touch upon this before, but I probably should have. When you develop a sales comparison approach, it's nothing more than a model. And so is the cost approach and the income approach. As far as the cost approach and income approach goes, you can develop more than one. And in fact, if you're very ambitious, you can develop more than one sales comparison approach. I'm creating a tool to help do that. But I think it's really important that we go ahead and consider that there is more than one perspective in the market area. And market reactions need more than one approach. And maybe perhaps after this class, you'll understand how to weight these different models, these different approaches, and develop better opinions of value and develop better cost approaches and income approaches if they are relevant to your market. One of the worst things that I just cannot stand hearing is that I've been, I'm not saying this as myself, but I'm an anecdote. I am an appraiser and I've been doing this for 30 years. I know what I'm doing. My opinion is true and correct, and you can't dispute it, which is ridiculous. That's not true. And I think that appraisers need to better be able to make better communication in disputes, in reconsiderations, using the MMA approach. We're going to be talking about selective bias and the sales comparison approach in our class heavily. It's an incredibly important topic. It identifies many of the shortcomings of the sales comparison approach, which they are numerous, and how we as appraisers can start to develop better approaches to value, because there are. It's that simple. There really are. In the course, we're going to be talking about identifying comparables and reporting those that way that we develop those comparables. We're going to be model development, how we develop the models, why we develop certain models versus other ones, how to weight those models against each other, which ones are more significant and not. Average weight analysis is an excellent tool to use in this. Understanding that outputs are indicators and not opinions in regards to particular tools. I won't be reviewing any tools. That's not what the course is about. So it'll be generalized as any tool. Identifying comparable sales using market data reduces reconsiderations of value and clarifications requests. Reporting that information creates a clear understanding for the intended user of market reactions. And I mean, Dodd-Frank came out and we have unintended users of the appraisal assignment. Okay. And we have to consider that in our appraisal because we are mitigating and managing liability at all times. So just because it's for the lender doesn't mean that the homeowner can't tie you up in litigation and tie you up with phone calls. All right. So your digital work file should be well understood by you for the proper defense of your work. This will help strengthen that digital work file. This means that you need to understand how you used your models and how you developed them and weighted them. You can't just have tool outputs. Just because a tool said you can do it doesn't mean you don't have to understand how it worked. This will probably be something that changes in the future of UsePap. Just because you don't know how something works doesn't mean you don't have to. You can still use it. That's nuts to me. Absolutely. You don't have to be able to explain it necessarily verbally in a courtroom. I get that, but you do need to understand how it works. Enhances public trust with less ambiguity, and doing things in your head is not good communication. I don't know how many of you as trainees remember back when you were looking through the MLS data sheets and you were considering, oh, well, these look like comparables and these look like comparables, similar sales prices, similar significant factors of value. Well, in this class, I'm going to be showing you a much, much, much better way of doing that. So that'll, if you get anything, please understand how to better identify comparables in your analysis. And we're going to be discussing the essential parts of data wrangling and developing models. Model development, again, types of models, choosing the right model, what makes a relatively good model versus a bad one. It's all relative. Understanding the shortcomings of models and how that relates to your data. Certain things to watch out for, certain pitfalls of descriptive analytics and quantifying what your eyes are telling you beyond an ambiguous estimate. Relative model analysis, I just touched up on this. Linear regression modeling, scatter plots, and analysis. Fundamental understanding of descriptive analytics. This is not inferential statistics at all. It's got nothing to do with it. So don't worry about understanding probability and factors of chance. This is not going to be that type of class at all. Much simpler. Understanding the differences between models, how they relate, developing skills to identify which models are most reliable and how you can use them in appraisal and report writing. And in conclusion, we've talked about the benefits a lot already, and I think that everyone, regardless of your experience level, can benefit from a class like this. And I think that we really need to work together and develop better tools and better analysis for our industry. And we need to start using them as peers. So again, if you like this class, if this was good, if you want to help share this and get more people in front of it and use it as a review tool, use it as a tool to develop appraisals, I'd be happy to talk to you more about it, but also get you signed up for the class eventually down the road. Subscribe to the channel so that you can see more videos on this, and talk to you soon. Thanks for watching.